Hey everyone! I don't know about you all, but I loved the Nintendo 3DS. I bought one back when it came out in 2011, and I still play it pretty regularly. There were just so many great games that came out on it, and now that the 3DS's life has come to an end as Nintendo is really just focusing on the Nintendo Switch, I wanted to look back on the past decade and do a countdown of my personal top 10 favorite 3DS games. So with that, cue the countdown. With number 10, it's The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. I'm just gonna let you know now that this is the first of several Zelda games on this list because the 3DS had so many great Zelda games. A Link Between Worlds is a sequel to the much-loved 1991 classic A Link to the Past. It was a lot of fun to return to this version of Hyrule that so many of us loved and grew up with, and it was really creative with its use of dimension and puzzle solving. I really like the new mechanics of Link being able to become flat like a painting to discover new areas, and the game really tried to not be linear like Zelda games had become, and instead opened up the world for people to explore as they wish. While there is a lot I love about this game, personally I wasn't a huge fan of the renting-owning items system. The art style felt just kind of bland to me compared to the game it was originally based on, which I know that's not a popular opinion, which is totally okay. And personally, I just felt the game was too open-ended in areas that still required a specific solution to proceed, which ended up in me just feeling lost and frustrated many times on my journey. Like in Breath of the Wild, things are totally open-ended for you to explore and discover, but there's almost always several ways to solve a problem. But in A Link Between Worlds, there was often still a specific thing you needed to do to solve a problem, and sometimes you'd trek to a new place to find out it required an item you didn't have, so then you go back and rent that item, and then you go back and realize, wait, no, I forget, that just, lifts you up, not over, so that item doesn't work, and then you need to go back again. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who had that issue, but because of that, to me, A Link Between Worlds is certainly a game absolutely worth playing, but there were just games I personally enjoyed more. Number 9, Pokemon X and Y. I just recently made a video on Pokemon Sword and Shield where I explained my personal experience with the Pokemon game franchise, and in it I said that Pokemon X and Y were some of my favorites. And since I didn't get to grow up with the first few generations that all my friends knew and loved, X and Y felt like a fun blend of nostalgic yet fresh. It was fun catching some of the Pokemon I've known since I was a little kid, and I've enjoyed a lot of the new ones. I didn't feel that it was overly hand-holdy. I really enjoyed being able to personalize my trainer. The game looked really good for the 3DS. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was a solid, fun, traditional Pokemon experience that I really enjoyed. If you've never played a Pokemon game and you want to know what they're all about, Pokemon X and Y are a pretty solid experience I can definitely recommend. Number 8, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask 3D. The second Zelda game on this list is the remake of the Nintendo 64 cult classic Majora's Mask. Now, Majora's Mask was always a game I loved in concept, but I struggled to play it because the 3-day time constraint just stressed me out so much and always kept me from completing it. But I loved the darker atmosphere, I loved the focus on side quests, I loved the fact that certain things happened at certain times of day, and the game rewarded you for taking your time to slowly discover certain events and people's schedules. But the original was too unforgiving for someone like me. While some die-hard Majora's Mask fans felt that the 3DS remake softened the game too much, this game was absolutely perfect for me to be able to relax a little bit more and enjoy the world of Termina. The graphics were all redone and looked gorgeous. The time system is more forgiving and allows you to be more selective in what hour of the day you want to travel to, so you're not just sitting around killing time. There are also more save spots. The only thing I don't understand is that the boss battles now feature random large eyes you have to hit. That felt like the most totally pointless change ever. But if you were ever intimidated by the original version of this beloved black sheep of the series, the 3DS version is a great way to try it out. Number 7, Fire Emblem Awakening. I was so stoked for Fire Emblem Awakening. This was certainly the best the series ever looked, even better than the GameCube and Wii games, and this was a handheld. I liked that I could create my own character. I actually really liked the marriage system and the strategy that created, even though I think that balance was lost in future games that included it. The first third of this game was also really solid in storytelling and atmosphere. This is one of the most loved 3DS games for many, and it's obvious why. It was a great introduction to the series for many newcomers, it was super solid as a tactical RPG, and it had a lot to offer. The main reason this is not higher on the list for me was because of the shift in character development being more pushed into support conversations instead of the main story. Because support conversations can be unlocked at any time, they had to be generic enough to fit at any point in the story. Because of this, I felt the main story was more generic and lacked some of the emotional depth I was used to for Fire Emblem, and I felt a bit less engaged in the story as the chapters went on. While I may be a bit more critical of this game than most people, I still love it dearly and have already gone back and replayed it twice. Number 6. Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright. This was another game I was super excited for when it was first announced. I played a lot of Professor Layton and Phoenix Wright on my Nintendo DS, so I had some pretty high hopes for this crossover. And man, okay, this game is so quirky and fun. Professor Layton and Phoenix Wright both find themselves in a medieval town on a witch hunt, and it features Layton's traditional puzzle solving and Wright's examinations and courthouse trials. While technically this is a bit more simplified version of both individual games' mechanics, I absolutely loved the blend. I thought it worked well, I loved the world this game took place in, I loved seeing these characters interact, and the gameplay was still really good. And how many times can I mention the word fun in a description in a video? And if you're familiar with either of these two series, then you know you can expect some twists and turns in the narrative as you go. This game is, for sure, an experience I will not forget. Number 5. Animal Crossing: New Leaf. I've been an Animal Crossing fan since the Nintendo GameCube, so of course I went out and bought New Leaf. But surprisingly, I didn't get into it as much as I did the previous games when I first got it. I was kind of getting burned out at stalking my shores looking for sand dollars and sea bass. That was until a couple of years later when my parents went through some really terrible health crises. Terrible health issues one summer, and I picked this game up again because I was so stressed and I just needed to calm my mind between phone calls and hospital visits, and I actually completely rebooted my island and started afresh, which is the first time I've ever done that. But with that, I fell in love with Animal Crossing all over again. I loved getting to customize more of my town, I loved traveling to the island, and of course I loved the calming nature of becoming friends with my neighbors and collecting money to upgrade my home. Animal Crossing games are always relaxing, they're comfortable, they're like a warm blanket and a mug of hot cocoa. This was the exact game I needed in a rough time of my life. Thank you, Animal Crossing. Number 4, Dragon Quest VIII: Journey of the Cursed King. I first heard about the Dragon Quest series when I started subscribing to Nintendo Power Magazine back in 2005. While the Nintendo DS had so much to offer in terms of Dragon Quest games, I decided as a preteen that I didn't like the art style, and because of that reason alone, I never picked one up. And yes, I'm kicking myself over that now. But thankfully, in the 3DS's lifetime, I finally picked up Dragon Quest VIII: Journey of the Cursed King, which is a remake of the PS2 fan favorite of the same name. The thing that really convinced me to buy this version was that it got rid of the random encounter battles from the original and instead placed its enemies in the world, which became a series staple with Dragon Quest IX. As someone who's not a fan of random encounters but still enjoys traditional RPGs, this was a seriously welcome change. Dragon Quest VIII is a great game, and I'm glad I finally made the decision to play it. It has great characters and story, a fun world, and it has so much wit, quirk, and puns. The story can be both lighthearted and then also deep and emotional, like the next moment. If you've never played a Dragon Quest game before, this game is a great place to start. Number 3, Theatrhythm Final Fantasy and Theatrhythm Final Fantasy Curtain Call. Okay, so I'm technically cheating a bit here, but these games are so similar that I can't really choose just one. Curtain Call does offer a lot more content than the original, but the original also features more EMS stages, and those, I love those. Anyways, Theatrhythm Final Fantasy was the series I played the most on my Nintendo 3DS. If you would have told me that when I first saw the trailer for this game, that I would not only enjoy playing it, but would absolutely fall in love with it, I would not have believed you. I'm not really into most music or rhythm games, but this became an addiction. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it features the glorious joy that is over 25 years of Final Fantasy music. This game made me really appreciate the legacy of this series so much, and as its own game, it works really well. You use the stylus to tap, slide, or hold certain notes while you get to listen to some of the greatest video game music ever composed. What could be wrong with that? Number 2. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time 3D. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is my all-time favorite video game. So as soon as I heard it was getting a remake, I knew without a doubt I had to get my hands on a 3DS so I could play it. This game looks amazing, as all the graphics were rebuilt from the ground up, and the game itself holds up really well despite being over 20 years old at this point. The gyro aiming is great, the ZL targeting works even better than in the original. Making the iron boots an equipable item is the best choice ever. Really, my only two complaints is that the Ocarina's notes are mapped really weirdly to the 3DS compared to the original N64 controller, and so it feels kind of random play, and I still can't memorize the songs even though I knew all of them on the N64. And also, while this game technically boasts 4 item equip slots instead of the original 3, 2 of them are touchscreen only, so I essentially only ever use 2, so it feels like less. But these nitpicks are minor. If you've never had a chance to play this classic, do yourself a favor and pick it up. It's considered by many to be one of the greatest video games of all time. But now, yes, I said that was number 2. What could possibly beat the game that I said was my favorite game of all time? And my number 1 pick for my favorite 3DS game is Fire Emblem Echoes: Shadows of Valentia. I loved this game so much, I made a whole video review dedicated to it before I even thought of starting a YouTube channel. Yeah, I sat my friends down, some of them who never even played video games, handed them my laptop, and forced them to sit down and watch a 15-minute video about a video game. So you can thank this game for being the reason you're even here watching this video and my channel now. Fire Emblem Echoes: Shadows of Valentia is an amazing game. It's a remake of 1992's Fire Emblem Gaiden, but they did such an amazing job with it. They updated so much of this game to make it feel like a modern Fire Emblem, but kept what made Gaiden feel unique and different from most of the series. The story felt more like the traditional Fire Emblem stories I fell in love with, and had most of the character development intertwined in the original game's story. If you want to hear me rant about why I love this game so much, that original video is on my YouTube channel, though just a warning, I've definitely gotten better at making videos since then, so maybe you watch it on 1.25 speed. The only main drawback I have to give for this game is the map design. The developers wanted to recreate the maps and objectives from the original game to stay true to Gaiden's original design, but Fire Emblem has also come a long way since 1992 in terms of creating interesting maps to play in. So most of these maps are just giant rectangles with the occasional obstacle you have to work your way around. However, this flaw still didn't dampen just how much I adored this game. It's certainly the most underrated 3DS Fire Emblem game, and it is definitely worth your time. This handheld had so many solid games in its 9-year run, it was hard to limit it to just 10 games. Even now, I wanted to mention some honorable mentions like Kid Icarus Uprising, Triforce Heroes, Metroid Samus Returns, Super Mario 3D Land, and Mario Kart 7. There were also tons of great games I never got to play. If you never played the 3DS and you still want to, it's not too late. The handheld is still being sold for new for $99, and many of the games I mentioned are part of the Nintendo Select series, which means they're only $20 for a new copy. It's a great way to experience some amazing games at a budget cost. If you're interested in getting some of these, I will have the links in the description below. And for those of you who did play the 3DS, what are some of your personal favorite games? Please feel free to tell us all in the comments what you believe is the best of the best. And that is all for today. If you would like to support the creation of these videos, please feel free to check out my Patreon. I know this is a difficult time financially for a lot of people, so please do not worry if you can't support. Other ways you can support this channel is by watching videos, commenting, and sharing it with others. Thanks so much, everybody. This has been the Girl with the Controller, and I hope you have a lovely day.